Thank you and welcome. It's my pleasure to talk to you about the Center of Excellence. We will talk today about the core model and Center of Excellence. And basically, for those two topics, there are three the most important items: the standardization, the capitalization, and continuous improvement. These are the basics of the whole concept. So there are the value drivers as well, or the value drivers are derived from them, and they are addressed by the Center of Excellence, by the core model, by the way of working that it imposes, and so on. So we will talk about all these three through the course of this whole presentation, and we will address them in a various manners, or talk how the COE address them in the various manner. But the standardization is, let's say, a starting point and the beginning of every journey, every loop of the journey that will happen with the COE that we'll talk later. Capitalization is taking the lessons learned from the sites, using the knowledge that you've gathered from the broad community of users and so on. And the continuous improvement is putting this knowledge and this capitalization into working and reassessing again the results. So to set the proper context for the whole discussion, we need to remind ourselves what we are talking about. We are talking about the implementing a solution or managing a solution for a number of sites which are coordinated by the Center of Excellence, which are working in a similar manner across the world. We are talking about the global enterprise. And how does it differ from a couple of sites that are working independently around the world? Okay, if the sites are working independently, they are producing basically the same product, period, right? But they are not necessarily producing in a similar way. They are not coordinated across themselves. They are basically just producing something with the same label, which more or less looks or works the same. But that's not something that we will address with the core model. The core model and the COE concept addresses the approach in which you have number of sites across the world, right? But they are producing the same product under the same label, but you are really worried about the consistency and the quality of the product, that you will deliver the same experience to your users regardless of where in the world you produce. And that you cannot do with a number of sites which are working independently. They have to be the sites that are working in a similar or almost the same manner, and which are governed and coordinated by a worldwide body of experts. And that's a way how, in global enterprise, you can increase the value generation and savings also on the IT. Because if you do things in a similar way, if you work in a similar way, then you need tools who are supporting you in the same or similar way across the world. Moreover, very often you need tools that will help you to enforce the standards of working in the same or similar way in multiple places around the world. What will help you to share the best practices between the sites across the world. So if you invent a better way of doing something in one place, let's say in Japan, and you want to implement these practices to decrease the quality costs insights in Europe, then if you do things in similar way, if you have similar tools like a MOM system, which is a templated based approach like we are talking here, core model, then you can take these best practices, these new ways of working which were invented somewhere else in the world, and very easily transfer to a part of organization that is somewhere else. And that's something that this global concept of Center of Excellence and templated solution approach supports and works very well. It helps you to centrally manage the business processes that you deploy in a site, centrally manage the ways of working, and share across organization. The very important topic about this sharing and managing the ways of working is finding the right balance, right? And this is a starting point for every implementation. This is a starting point on the first wave that we will talk of the projects that we are doing. Okay, so we are talking a multi-site solution. We start from a site number one. How do we make it How do we make it multi-site? How do we make it worldwide, and so on? The very important first is to involve people from many sites in the definition of the solution. This definition of the solution has to have some kind of goal behind it. And the goal could be either to go with what we have totally on the right-hand side, full core. So one solution to be used by every single local site. This is not always possible. The reality is a bit different. In reality, we have a situation where multiple plants have some kind of local needs that have to be addressed by local specific flavor of the solution or local specific flavor of the business or processes that they use. But we cannot go to the situation that we have fully on the left-hand side, right? We cannot do a full local implementation because that will not be a core solution. It will be just a small common piece, and every plant around the world will say, I do it differently. Oh, I'm so specific, I need to do it differently, I need to have my own flavor. But then you're losing the whole concept of sharing best practices, you're losing the whole concept of having the savings in deploying these best practices around the world, because the solutions, the way of working, the business processes supported will be completely different. So how to achieve this balance? Okay, it's very hard to go full core. It's very hard to make sure that everyone is working the same, because that can be achieved only in very specific situations, and it can happen only for a couple of situations around the world. But typically, you need to aim for having this core percentage as big as possible and keeping it further down the road as big as possible, like 80-20, 90-10, maybe. So we need to think of optimizing the ratio of common features, taking into account all constraints. And the thing with optimizing this ratio is that you need to listen to the sites. You need to listen to the people who are saying, oh, I need this, I need that, I'm a bit different, and so on. But you also need to be able to take a decision that, no, you are not so different, and tell it to someone else, and keep the core level and the harmonization between sites high. And that is something that we will touch way more during this session, during this presentation, because we will be focused mostly on managing the request, and who is managing the request, and who is managing and taking the decisions of what goes into the core. Of course, I said it is possible to have a full core, and there are some tricks that a number of our customers has played, and there are lessons learned from them. It's like, okay, anything that every site requests is revised. If it makes sense, maybe not just for this site, but if it makes sense for more than one site or more than two, this will go not as a local flavor, it will go to the full core, and it will be enabled as a module only to the sites that are requested. But that's a governance topic. You need to take this decision. You need to say to your customers and your end customers, which are your business people from the sites, okay, what I can do for you, what I will not do for you, and why. This in a core. It's a bit of a trick. It's almost but it keeps the solution even more harmonized, but it's not necessarily applicable for everyone. So the most common is that we have a big set of core business processes with a bit of local adjustment for the way they work. And the important thing with the planning and managing your solution about these flavors and the harmonization of the business processes is that actually your ultimate goal is to get the most possible alignment around the world to the core solution. And not only from the benefits that I mentioned before on the multi-site organization, that is a network of harmonized plants that are working and creating the same product forward and so on. It's also about fast speed of deployment and ease of maintaining the solution, right? If you are having the different solutions, and I will touch that later also in the presentation, if you hold different flavors of the solution, you need more people to maintain it and to manage it. So what happens typically is that during the deployment of the core model across many of sites, harmonization between sites and the use of processes that are site specific is decreasing. The increasing is the use of the processes that are common. And we increase the number of the common way of working inside the core model. We do it in waves. We'll talk about that a bit later. But we aim to decrease the number of the processes which are the specific ones. And that should allow you to actually all the time expand the core model, this percentage, the functionalities which are not inside. So avoid going to the left-hand side of the previous slide, but continuously going towards the right-hand of the slide. As I said, this is a journey, and this is something very, very important. With the functional scope of the MOM program is not a one project. It's a continuous improvement at the end, right? Even with the rollouts, with the functional waves that we're thinking, it also incorporates already the lessons learned. That's why I said capitalization, continuous improvement, and standardization at the very beginning. So if we start with building a core model, we take 1 or 2 sites as a pilot site for the initial rollout. They allow us to construct the rollout toolkit, the initial way of working, and so on. But then after going to the 3rd, 4th, 5th site, and so on, we need to immediately incorporate in our methodology the lessons learned for the previous wave of rollouts. If we want to be really fast and roll out like some of our customers 25 sites in 3 years or in 2 years, then we really need to learn and become more efficient to shrink down the rollout waves and incorporate the lessons learned. And that's something that basically we can summarize. Any kind of core model implementation around the world summarizes to a ramp up. It's a constant ramp up. It's a ramp up of your organization. It's a ramp up of the ways of working that you have. It's a ramp up of the scope. It's a ramp up of the teams. It's a ramp up of the governance on top of that one. With that one, it is important with rolling out, with addressing the multi-site on how you will plan your deployment. Planning these waves, planning these sites that you will go through cannot be random, cannot be the site that shouts the loudest, that is most important. It is one of the key things, that's business readiness assessment. It's operational readiness of the site, and it has to be assessed by a number of people forming the Center of Excellence, which we'll talk later, but the site really needs to be suitable for change. It doesn't have to be the most complex site. It doesn't have to be the site that says it needs it the most. It has to be really a ready site. So this business readiness assessment is a key component in successful rollouts. Very often, it happened that our customers in the past took as one of the sites as a step forward, the site that was saying it is very important, we want it now, yes, we are ready, and so on. And it occurred that there were a lack of readiness for business change. There was either lack of ownership on the site, or it was too complex at that moment. It was the core model was not mature enough for this particular site, and it would have been better if it was matured on the other side. And that's where the rollouts slowed down, and there needed to be some step backs, reassessment of the readiness, reassessment of where to go, and restart of the program. This is one of the pitfalls that is very easy to fall into, and it will cost a time. So it's good to take into account that not always the one who shouts the loudest is the most important one. But anyway, apart from the business readiness assessment and the readiness of the people on the site and the processes maturity and so on, the deployment planning has also a couple of other topics. It's first of all how well we have already core model covering the business scenarios, what are the functions that are ready and that affects which site we should pick for the next wave of deployment. Planning infrastructure and hardware, what is the ready, whether are there any initiatives running on the sites that are going on, which should be taken into account, and so on. And to touch a bit a topic of the rollout toolkit. So what is it that we use to roll out our solution? This rollout toolkit is not only the configuration, it's whole documentation, user training, data migration and validation, cutover plan, and the solution itself. And the rollout toolkit, before going to any site, before even assessing the readiness of the site, needs to be tested. when the rollout toolkit is tested before going for the live site, that will speed up the things, because you know you have the procedures, you have a team which is able to deploy the solution. They know how to do it. They know how to do work with local people on the site. They know it not only technically, but also from a change perspective, and they can help with this readiness assessment. But that's just the deployment, right? The biggest question which we want to answer during this session is about, okay, so how do I create my COE? What is it, the COE? How do I start with the concept of the central management of the solution and of the MOM program, so on? The thing is that the COE starts way before the rollout, way before the first wave of sites. It really ramps up since the beginning of the MOM program. It starts being created from the selection and blueprinting phase. Typically, the most successful center of excellences and the ways of working were formed based on people who were the ones who did drive the selection of the MOM vendor together. These people were the ones who brought to us the requirements. They were during the whole discussions and change of the requirements during the selection process, change of the requirements during the blueprinting when they involved more bigger community of users. And they started and naturally took the responsibility for the solution they bought to be implemented in their multiple sites. So are the natural starting points for the Center of Excellence. And of course, the Center of Excellence starts small. It's 1-2 persons maybe, right? But then during the rollouts to the subsequent sites, this community of people enhances its number, right? But it's also a very often asked question that I have is like, okay, is it a full-time job to be on a Center of Excellence? It's like, do I need to scale up my IT organization tremendously and so on? It doesn't have to be. It's a natural part of the job afterwards, after implementing the system, that someone starts taking ownership of either a business processes, alignment, or how you use the solution like you were using before, the different solutions that are paper and so on. There were people responsible for how it works and then what you do for supporting your users and so on. So they basically changed their role to be part of the Center of Excellence related to the MOM implementation. And they ramp up over the time. Their number increases over the time, their responsibility, the scope increases over the time, because as we say, with every rollout, every functional wave we are creating, we are increasing potentially the business processes that are supported by the system. So the ramp up is not only on the scope side, but it's also on the organizational side, right? But it's very important to remember also that at this initial phase where we're starting thinking about the Center of Excellence team, is that it has to be constructed by the people who are business owners. Not only the IT owners, but people who are responsible and knowledgeable about the business processes which we are supporting with the solution. Because we have to keep in mind that MOM is not just an IT system. It's a system supporting and solving business problems and helping people to drive their processes more efficiently. So it has to be the business requirements, business needs that are driving this solution, not just a pure IT perspective. So what is the mission and the process that are supported by this small initially and then a growing team of people and so on? It's basically the full living cycle. Create, improve, deploy, execute, and monitor. And then create, improve, deploy, execute, and monitor. It never ends. This never ends. This is a living solution. MOM is a living system which will evolve together with the ways of working and with the production processes as they are evolving in our plants. Because you will continuously chase to be the excellence. You will chase your competitions. You will stay ahead of your competitors. And so on. So you will be changing your ways of working, and this system should change itself with the way of working, right? So the COE, after the first initial implementations, will work as a group of people and a governance council, which will be assessing, okay, what we do next. How do we next improve our solution? And they will have to create this improvement plan together with either us or our system integrator work on creating new flows, deploy these flows, execute, continue executing, monitor the outcome of this execution, and then create improvement, right? So it's a continuous improvement of the solutions with alignment of best practices and deriving these best practices out of the ideas that are coming from large community of knowledge. So something that I said before was the capitalization, improvement, and standardization. So who are the people typically in this center of excellence? And this is something that we will focus the most in this presentation. It's about governance and about managing the solution. And as I said, it is not just IT, about infrastructure, support, and so on. They are always there because they will need to support. They will need to help you to deploy the solution on the servers. They will need to help to create your environment on every side. They will need to help you with the deployment, with the go live, with the updates, and so on. But these are supporting roles which are part of the center of excellence only. The most important part of a center of excellence are not related only to the IT topics and the deployment or the management or creating the actual packages and so on. It's the business leaders and subject matter experts and key users and future end users from the plants and from the corporate who are business experience leaders, which are the business owners. And all this group of people is basically the ones who are taking the decision of how the solution will evolve, where the solution will go forward, how you will keep your core model into either a full core or 80-20 split and so on, and how you will not allow the solution to go into this dramatic shrinking of the core model and expansion of the local customization. So I want to focus today on the importance of this so-called Manufacturing Governance Council and business aspect of Center of Excellence. So people who are taking decisions, how they are taking these decisions. So the topic of the Manufacturing Governance Council is a body inside the organization who will basically provide a strategic direction for the solution. It will discuss with the functional architects, it will discuss with the plants, it will assess the plant's needs, and it will take decision. They will take decision whether we allow something to go into the core model or not. They will take the decision which way we want to expand next the core model. What will be the next functional wave of functionalities that we want to create. They will prioritize the plant request because everything that happens after the first go live, even the second go live in the second plant, is immediately when people start using any new system, any new toy, they start to have a new requirement. They want it to be better, they want to be better for their needs, they want to have something more, because as they go, they learn how to use it, and as they go and learn how to use it, they improve their understanding. When they improve their understanding, they increase their needs and requests. So that's something that is very important, the prioritization of requests. And this governance council has to be strong enough to be able to say no. This is a very important topic, saying no to some of the requests, because there will be a number of requests of the functionalities which will basically overthrow the core model and solution, harmonized solution across the plants concept, because basically people will want to have all this particular interesting functionality that is suitable only for my 1% of requirements, but I say it is very, very, very important. That's something that is key in keeping your core model a core model instead of disbanding it into the multiple individual solutions running into many plants. So this Manufacturing Governance Council is very, very important. It works with the technical leader and the functional expert of the Center of Excellence from the functional perspective to assess, discuss how difficult it is to address some of the new business flows and so on, but they are taking decisions and they are communicating these decisions to the plants worldwide. Some examples from the practice, right? So how does it work with the governance and so on? How often we can improve, how fast we can react on the sites and so on. And this is one of the examples from one of our customers, basically on how they manage the demand. The interesting thing is that actually they do manage the demand for enhancements and changes together for the ERP and the MOM solution, right? And they are providing the whole network of the plants, their whole community worldwide, which is more than 30 sites, with monthly solution updates, which they call a shuttle. But the monthly solution updates basically mean quite a bit of workload to prepare them, deployment, and so on. And but basically that means also working on a backlog of needs requested by the many sites. And of course, from 35 sites around the world, there is quite a lot of requests coming in. So how do you manage this backlog? Of course, based on priority, cost, and of the implementation. So there is a site assessment done with, if there is a gap of 80 Mondays, that is allowed for the site, 20 Mondays maximum for appraisal, under 1% of core solutions after 20 sites. That's something that are the KPI. Deployment methodology and tools is supported by 1 FTE only, and it decreased from 3 original FTEs. So that that is also something to take care about how many people will be working on this deployment execution. But how do you prioritize? So basically, if something is beneficial for many sites, not only for one site globally, if it takes reasonable time to implement and so on, it gets high priority and it gets immediately or most likely immediately into the core model and is deployed globally, because you can do it fast. You can share the benefit in multiple sites immediately, and you can do that every month, such an improvement. If there is some bigger thing which is beneficial for everyone, okay, if there is a high cost, but it's a high benefit and so on, it will have a second priority. Maybe it will not be a monthly shuttle. Maybe it will be this bigger update, which is done every a year or two and so on. And we can do it this way, or maybe half a year and so on. That's where we will put it. But if something is very expensive and it brings benefit only to a certain very small number of processes or very small number of sites and so on, that will get low priority. That will get low priority. It's not always the one who shouts the most is the most important, because we are managing a multi-site solution for many sites. And this is something which is very important. This governance body inside the company in the Center of Excellence is someone who is managing a demand coming from all of your sites. These are your internal customers, and it's understandable that you want them to feel good, right? You want them to be happy and so on, right? But then you need to remember that you have a number of sites which are asking, and it's a common good, let's call it, and common benefits which are important, not always the one side benefit. Which matter. Another example with a different life cycle, let's say, of the releases and so on from another customer, was where also keeping it standardized and harmonized was very important. But here I want to focus on the whole process, not only on the way on how we do control the scope or how we do prioritize based on value and the cost, right? So here it is. Basically, the process of enhancement reviews is with a similar frequency as it was in the previous solution, where there were monthly releases. But here it is monthly enhancement review done by, of course, Center of Excellence and Governance Board or Governance Council. That is reviewed monthly on a continuous basis with central business and so on. There are quarterly IT governance meetings to focus on strategy and so on. But the releases are happening only twice per year. And that to be able to deliver bigger changes, bigger enhancements, flow, prioritize properly according to the strategy and so on, not so much ad hoc, not so much fast. When you have more stable way of working, when you are not in a very disruptive environment, when you need adapt and release new products every quarter, and when you are more stabilized, this will be fine to incorporate enhancements and lessons learned twice a year from your multiple sites. When you have 10 sites around the world and you gather the enhancement, they have time to, first of all, deploy, to start the lessons learned, to gather some of the input, provide you back. You can react, create it, a new solution, flavor or enhancements over the couple of months, dispatch it to them, and then start using it again, capitalize on lessons learned. So another way is, okay, conduct your reviews of the request, prioritization and harmonization frequently, but don't burden yourself too much with the releases of the solution too often. And this brings it to the very important topic, which is the lifecycle management. Ultimate goal is to keep as much as possible all the sites on the same version of the processes. Don't create for yourself as an organization the trouble that you will have, 3 sites who upgraded, 3 sites who upgraded to the second wave, 10 sites who didn't upgrade it because they don't see it as it makes sense. Basically, don't allow yourself to dilute the core model or to have multiple versions of the core model running across the sites. And it has to do something with the speed as well of rollouts and speed of creating enhancements and the site readiness that I mentioned before. Because even if we will have some sites which will want to push the solution very fast and increase the functional coverage very fast, most likely you will have sites who will not be able to do it in such a pace. And then they will remain on the older flavor of the solution, while the other ones, they're very early adopters and eager ones, maybe bigger, maybe with a larger volume of business users or stronger business users, they will be setting a very, very, very fast pace. From the common organization perspective, this will bring you a trouble, because you will have sites who are lagging behind on functionalities. They don't need them in such a pace, and you will have ones who are running on the third version of the solution, and this will disharmonize your core model. Even if it will be the same core model enhanced with new flavors and so on, you will have sites who cannot upgrade and don't want to upgrade because they are not ready. They are not business ready, not IT ready. They are not business ready to start using all the enhancements and so on. And that's something that will disharmonize you and make your life as a center of excellence a bit harder, because you will have like 2 or 3 flavors of the solution to manage, which is what you don't want. Because if you have 2 or 3 flavors of the solution to manage, that means that you need to have people being familiar with how to fix stuff in a version 1, how to fix stuff in a version 2, and how to fix stuff in a version 3. So you need 3 times more people, most likely, right? And that's something to avoid. So the pace of how you enhance your solution, how you deploy your solution enhancement should be aligned with the capacity of your organization as well, okay, to accommodate the change. So to summarize what we've said today, there is a lot of contributors to standardization, capitalization, and continuous improvement topics. And the center of excellence in overall is related to all 3 of these. Continuous improvement is basically taking all the time the capitalization, the lessons learned from all the sites, and managing the solution lifecycle, managing it based on the conscious decisions done by business people of what makes sense and what is needed to be put into working. The standardization is the heart of whole process. You want to have one solution that runs around the world, which allows you to produce in a similar way or in the same way, with the same KPIs, with the same processes to assure the same level of quality, whether you are manufacturing in Europe, Americas, China, or anywhere else in the world. And that standardization will allow you to have a faster return on investment, reduce total cost of ownership, right? Because you will basically reduce your cost of quality, you will reduce the time of learning people around the world about how to use solution. You will use lessons learned from one place, you will capitalize on lessons learned from one place in another. After going live with one flavor, okay, then go live in a second site, which is similar, will be easier, and so on. And then all those lessons learned will go back to the review, to the board, to the council that is managing this solution. And that council managing this solution, not only the functional set of people who are creating the new flows, but the people who are taking decision where to go is a very, very important topic. Of course, we can dwell into all these individual particularities of the Center of Excellence for hours. So I believe this is a good starting point to highlight some important things that we can dwell more together with the sales teams or your customer executives further on, organize some meetings and so on. But here, during this short period of time, I wanted to highlight the importance of the governance, highlight the importance of the journey towards the governance, that this team is built since the very beginning, and it remains to the very end of the life cycle of the solution. And I hope this presentation did trigger some of your questions or some of your doubts were calmed, and I will be happy together with all my colleagues to follow up on that one on the individual meetings later. At this time, I would like to thank you for attending, and bye.